Hello and welcome to Lexitecture, a podcast about word origins and histories. My name is Ryan, and in each episode my friend Amy and I present a new word to each other and you, delving into its past, uncovering its secrets, and discovering that even the most basic, unassuming word can offer up precious truth nuggets of wordy trivia gold. If that sounds like the show for you, it probably is, so tell your friends and come along for the ride. Today's episode, Carol Dilemma. Shall we do some words?
Let's do some words. Do you want to go first or will I go first?
You go first.
Okay, I'm going to search out my various tabs. This is I keep thinking that my computer is currently like a graphical representation of my brain because there are about 20 tabs open.
Yeah.
And I don't want to close any of them because I do not have the requisite brain power to remember the ones that I've closed.
Right,
so
yeah.
I have to just keep them all going. Okay, wow. I've... One small diversion.
Okay.
You know how in the OED, when you're looking at a word, there's a little sidebar that shows you the words that come before and after it alphabetically.
Yes.
I just discovered a very intriguing word 3 entries before the word that I'm going to talk about.
Oh, cool.
Okay, so the word I'm going to talk about. I have my husband to thank for many things, but specifically I have my husband to thank today for this word.
Okay.
So my husband is a maths teacher and he was at some in-school training where some expert guy was selling something or other system about teaching maths. You can tell I was listening intently to this story. However, my husband was reasonably impressed with this human being. He thought he was pretty good. His presenting skills were good. Sometimes in-service training and when you're a teacher is pretty dull and tedious and you spend your whole time thinking there are so many other things I could be doing with my time right now. But this guy was actually pretty good. However, he did mention that the guy had a bit of a thing for the fact that in English we're not consistent with the etymologies of our numbers. So,
okay.
For example, I'm looking at a comparative table here of Greek and Latin number words. So in Latin we have demi or semi for half,
Right.
uni for one, duo, tri, quadr or quadri, quinque, sex, septem, octo, novem, decem, and then it goes on to hundreds and thousands. Whereas in Greek we have hemi, hen, di, tri, tetra, penta, hexa, hepta, octa or octo, ennea, deca instead.
And so, yeah.
And
okay.
so the point that this guy was making was that sometimes we use Greek and sometimes we use Latin. So my husband had said to me, because sometimes he considers me as a fountain of all knowledge, which I find really quite alarming because I am not a fountain of all knowledge. When it comes to things etymological, I am an interested buffoon, basically.
Right.
So he said to me, so how come we have unicorns but we have triangles? That's a poor example to use because tri is in fact consistent over Latin and Greek. But it's a Tetra Pak, but it's a quadrilateral. So how come? And I had said, well, word stuff, which is often my answer. And I talked about the whole, so at Sound Education I attended a talk that was about how we vote with the words that we use. In other words, usage is very much about how many people are doing it and what choices do they make through the words that they make, the words that they use, and the ones that are used most commonly survive, and the ones that aren't used don't survive. Simple as that.
Right.
So my not very satisfying or scientific answer was, well, just because we've used those words, that's how it goes. But he then brought up a word that it had never occurred to me how very simple and satisfying its etymology was.
Okay.
And the word is dilemma.
Ooh.
So dilemma
Okay.
is defined by the OED, the noun dilemma, and its first usage given is in rhetoric, a form of argument involving an adversary in the choice of two, or loosely more, alternatives, either of which is or appears equally unfavourable to him.
Oh.
So that's the first meaning that's given. The second So hence, in popular use, a choice between two or loosely several alternatives which are or appear equally unfavourable, a choice of doubt or perplexity, a fix. We also have dilemma, the verb, to place someone in a dilemma or to be in a dilemma. This is the state of to be in a dilemma that says this is an obsolete, rare usage of the word. But there are written examples in the OED to support this usage of it.
I've never heard it used as a verb before. That's interesting.
No, I haven't either. It is quite interesting. So when we're looking at dilemma in English, the first usage given in the OED is 1523.
Okay.
And the second, 1551, gives this particular quotation: dilemma, otherwise called a horned argument, is when the reason consisteth of repugnant members, so that whatsoe'er you grant you fall into the snare. That's from T. Wilson, Rule of Reason.
That's fantastic.
And the reason that, as I say, that this is such a satisfying word is that it means dilemma, two, and if we go to the word lemma, basically two propositions or assumptions.
Yeah.
And this is absolutely straight Greek etymology. Di meaning two, lemma meaning assumption, decision, argument. But the word lemma is also used in English.
What?
So, yeah, Lemma. So again, looking at the OED.
Okay, yeah.
It's used in maths. A proposition assumed or demonstrated which is subsidiary to some other. See also, we have other things. So, the mathematical occasion whereby Hippocrates was led to the former lemma.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so quite a pleasing little word, lemma.
Yeah.
So they use it in maths. It's also used, the second given here, the argument or subject of a literary composition, prefixed as a title or heading, also a motto appended to a picture, etc. So two titles, if you want to think about it in terms of dilemma. It's also the heading or theme of a scholium, annotation, or gloss. Excitingly, it's also a word that's used in the context of lexicography. You know how we love those guys.
Yeah.
A lexical item as it is presented, usually in a standardised form in a dictionary entry, a definiendum, which is a very, very pleasing word indeed, definiendum.
Definiendum is
so,
awesome.
In order to find the etymology of dilemma, breaking it down into those two component Greek parts, it brought me to this second lemma, which is itself lemma. And, this is the sort of thing that makes me really, really happy. I also discovered, now this made me happy for a lot of reasons. I also discovered an entry for, it's blog.oxforddictionaries.com, an article written by John Kelly. John Kelly blogs about etymology at www.mashedradish.com, and I followed him on Twitter. I'm finally on Twitter. I use it now and read it and everything.
Fantastic.
This is exciting. Yeah, it's like podcasts. What have I been doing all my life? Not being on Twitter.
Yeah.
And what have I been doing all my life? Not listening to hardcore history like an obsessed crazy maniac.
Yeah. I mean, the latter point, I don't think you'll find too many people arguing with that. I feel like there's a lot of people, kind of like the more grizzled Twitter vets out there, kind of going, "Oh, you're adorable," when you talk about Twitter in glowing terms, because, I mean, it's like it's any seething mass of people.
Yeah,
you're gonna have a bunch of jerks mixed in there, but luckily Susie Dent's also on Twitter, so
yeah. Yeah, exactly. Well, I saw a tweet, I forget where it came from. I tweeted about this. I'm like, oh, tweetception. But I saw a tweet that made reference to Scot Bio.
Yep.
You know, the guy who played Chachi in Happy Days.
Yep.
And presumably Joni Loves Chachi. That was the spin-off, wasn't it?
Yeah,
and my thought process ran thus. 1, Scot Bio is alive? Oh, how interesting. 2, I wonder whatever happened to that guy. So I clicked on this mention that had been made of Scot Bio and his Twitter profile, and very, very quickly found Chachi has disappointed me. So I don't know if you're aware of Scot Bio, but basically he has a terrible Twitter following of terrible people espousing quite awful right-wing, US neoconservative
Right.
ideals.
Yeah.
And so it was very much the grizzled Twittarians, I'm sure, were like, bless her, she's learning. You know,
Yeah.
you need to check out a few Scot bios before you get to the Susie Dents.
Yeah.
And I found quite quickly that not everyone out there is nice.
No,
This was not news
true.
to me, but you know, it was a little disappointing given I have a new toy and I want it to be shiny and nice for as long as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so this little article here about the origin of the word dilemma
Yes.
talks about some of the things that I've just mentioned here. So to or twice, lemma, premise or assumption. And it's given here as literally that which is taken up. And we also have, Kelly points out that the Greek lemma also referred to income or profit. So like two different profits, two different outcomes, incomes. And what I started to get interested in very, very quickly, almost nothing that I read about the word dilemma didn't make mention of the fact that you can be tossed on the horns of a terrible dilemma. So I started to think about, well, how old is that?
Mm-hmm.
Where did that particular etymology come from? Does the OED cite it? Or, you know, so in order to kind of look a little bit closer at the horns of a dilemma, I checked out Brewer's Dictionary of Phrase and Fable.
Oh, fantastic.
And it's the online version via bartleby.com, which is an amazing site if you like any sort of written down things. And
I do.
So this is the Dictionary of Phrase and Fable from 1898. And the entry is given thus: horns of a dilemma. A difficulty of such a nature that whatever way you attack it, you encounter an equal amount of disagreeables. Macbeth, after the murder of Duncan, was in a strait between two evils. If he allowed Banquo to live, he had reason to believe that Banquo would supplant him. If, on the other hand, he resolved to keep the crown for which he had filed his hands, he must step further in blood and cut Banquo off. Lemma is something that has been proved, and being so is assumed as an axiom. It's from the Greek word lambano, I assume or take for granted. Dilemma is a double lemma, or two-edged sword which strikes either way. The horns of a dilemma is a figure of speech taken from a bull, which tosses with either of its horns. Teach me to plead, said a young rhetorician to a sophist, and I will pay you when I gain a cause. The master sued for payment at once, and the scholar pleaded, if I gain my cause, you must pay me, and if I lose it, I am not bound to pay you by the terms of our contract. The master pleaded, if you gain, you must pay me by the terms of the agreement. And if you lose, the court will compel you to pay me. So this is what Brewer has to say about the horns of a dilemma. I really wanted to find a date. I really wanted to find the etymology, not just of the word, but of this phrase. And I kind of came up dry, but what I did find very interesting, the OED entry where I started off. So I said that the first written record that we'll have of the usage of this word is from 1523. The second, in 1551, says dilemma, otherwise called a horned argument. So it would seem that the sense of the two horns of a dilemma is almost as old as the usage of the word itself, or certainly the recorded usage of the word itself, which I found really, really interesting. It's a perfect sort of metaphor.
Yeah.
You know, it expresses so beautifully the form of the word, meaning of the word, that it's almost as tied to the meaning of the word as the word itself is.
Yeah, that's very cool.
Yeah, so the other kind of slightly amatastic thing that I discovered, you know how I love a classical reference. And I discovered that while I was trying to find the etymology of the phrase, the horns of a dilemma, I discovered that there is an alternative to this phrase, very, very similar meaning, and it is to be between Scylla or Scylla and Charybdis. And that made me really happy too. So just as we have two sharp horns on a bull, we'll have the two terrible, terrible features, usually thought to be in, I think, the Gulf of Messina of Sicily, where we have, on the one hand, this terrible, terrible whirlpool that will suck your ship down into the depths, and on the other hand, you have the terrible monster Scylla. I never know how to pronounce that word. I think I want Scylla.
Sure.
And so we have a little entry on Wikipedia about the myth and the proverb, and it says that several other idioms such as on the horns of a dilemma, between the devil and the deep blue sea, and between a rock and a hard place express similar meanings. So the next time that you find yourself tossed on the horns of a terrible dilemma, and you want to be a little bit pretentious and throw in a classical reference, you can always be between Scylla and Charybdis instead.
Scylla and Charybdis. That's very cool. I find it's interesting because you'll often hear people talk about a dilemma without the negative context, though. Like, without the negative connotations. Like, oh, and now I have a real dilemma. I got to pick between one of these two things. Like, just, it's sort of almost weakened to the point where it's just a decision to be made rather than necessarily
neither of these things are good.
A horrible catch-22. Like, that idea that it's... that there are no good options. It's two
damned if you do, damned
bad
if you
options.
don't.
Yeah. And I like the idea, that idea of it being, coming from a settled opinion or an assumption. Like, it's not necessarily true. Like, these aren't necessarily real things. These are, like, you're stuck partially in a prison of your own making.
Yeah, absolutely.
It may well be true that you have no good options, but the problem is that you have assumed that you have no good options. And that your assumption is that you're damned if you do and damned if you don't. And that assumption and sort of prejudice for your future course kind of plays into that definition of it as well. I find kind of interesting.
Yeah. I do. I very much love rhetorical and to some extent, I know much less about logic than I do about rhetoric. But rhetorical terms are just, yeah, I love those guys and rhetorical devices and that sort of thing. So I do like the fact that a rhetorician, there's a word that I always have to think hard about before saying, has this sense of, well, here I am, I'm constructing this argument, I am looking out for all possibilities, and even when both of those possibilities are entirely crappy, I'm still going to have a strategy for dealing with them, even if it's just in the form of a word to describe that thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I quite love the fact that rhetoric gives names to things that often we have no idea that they have a name. And then you discover not only do they have a name, but guys hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years ago were arguing about these things and writing about these things and, setting down rules for these things, that kind of thing. Yeah. So I really love that.
That's fantastic.
So yeah, dilemma.
Well, thank you very much to Ross.
Yeah. Good work.
I like
he's a useful dude.
I like
in many
him
ways.
being a portal into an entire world of words that I would have no idea about. Because I mean, you said lemma, and I was like, that's not a real thing. And you're like, it's a math word. I was like, oh, well, that explains why I don't know it then.
I mean, there are some fantastic mathematical words. I mean, we've talked about surd before.
Yeah, we did surd. That was very cool. Yeah, it's just neat to have another.
And it's such an odd word, surd.
It is a very weird word.
It's a strange one.
These math people. Very cool.
But then so many mathematical words they're straight Greek and Latin translations, and I quite love those.
Yeah.
I mean, I like to get my teeth into something that's a little bit unusual, a little bit juicy, and it's gone through some Germanic sound changes and all of that stuff. But sometimes you just like it when you can go, oh yeah, Greek bit, Greek bit, Greek bit. That makes complete sense.
That's right. It's playing Lego with classical languages.
Exactly.
Yeah. Very cool.
Do you know, so Lego means to play.
Okay.
Did you know this?
I think I did know that.
And when I was a very, very young Greek student in my first term at St Andrews learning Greek 101, and it was probably 1001. I think 101, I don't know if it's because it's kind of passed into popular culture as this sense of you don't know anything if you're doing 101, or if they just like 4 numbers better than 3. Anyway, doing this introduction to classical Greek, and I learned that the word for home is oikia, so spelled Oikea, or roughly transliterated as such.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, that makes perfect sense. Obviously, the homeware giant is named after the Greek word.
Right.
That is not the etymology of IKEA at all.
No? Okay.
Go and look that one up. It's interesting.
I will. I think I did at one point. And
so
I'm forgetting.
I both made and destroyed a folk etymology in my own head.
Excellent. That's
Yeah.
what this is all about. Awesome.
Cool.
So
What have you got?
I have a thematically appropriate word. I was looking ahead at the scheduling and when this episode will come out, and this will be our last episode before Christmas.
Oh, you're so much more organized than I
So,
am.
so Merry Christmas in advance to people listening to
Yes.
this in the future. Whoa. So my word is carol.
Nice.
Yeah. So I figured, it's got a neat little Christmassy ring to it. So that you'll realize later on if you listen back to that was a pun, but it doesn't make any sense yet. We'll get to it. So
I think I'm kind of already there, but I used to be a church musician, so
yeah, so you know all about this stuff.
both interested in church music and interested in language. There's a lot of fodder there for me to be interested.
Yeah, exactly. So
Continue.
Of course, now basically a carol is almost inextricably tied with Christmas. Like it's a Christmas song. Sometimes it's not even a Christmas song. Sometimes it's like, Let It Snow isn't a Christmas song. It's just a winter song, but it's a Christmas carol because it's sung at Christmas. So, the word carol dates back to basically the turn of the 14th century. So, the earliest attestation in the OED is 1300. The second earliest is 1303. And it, at the time in 1300, its meaning was a circular dance. So the thing that came to my mind was that kind of typical or stereotypical or archetypal image of people dancing around like a maypole, or
Yeah, sure.
And then I thought of sort of the kind of Eastern European, Slavic kind of traditional gathering dances. I have a photography business. I recently shot a wedding that was a Romanian family, or the bride's family was Romanian, and it was fantastic. It was a Romanian Orthodox wedding service, which I'd never been to a Romanian Orthodox church at all for anything.
I think I could tell you approximately nothing about the Romanian Orthodox Church.
Well,
this sounds
exactly.
fantastic.
And so, the confluence of theological questions that I had, and just the beauty of the imagery and all that. It was awesome. But they had a couple of traditional Romanian songs, and the whole family would get together and dance around. And it wasn't strictly speaking a circle, because it was more of a spiral, because I'm not sure if that's the nature of the dance, or if there was just too many people to fit in one circle, so it became a big spiral thing. Anyway, this conjured that image for me. And so a ring dance is the earliest attestation in the OED, dating back to 1300. Close behind that was that the word carol referred to the song to which they were dancing.
Right.
So because of the nature of written attestations to words, it's hard to tell what was actually first, and they're so close that I'm sure you can make an argument for either way, whether the word referred to the song or the dance. But what's clear is that they seem to be quite tied together. Like, it was a very specific song if it was a song, and it's a very specific dance if it was just a dance.
You see that a lot in music. You have things like brain immediately
A
empties
jig
itself
and a
of any
reel.
Examples. Yeah, there's a good example.
Is that the dance, or is that the song to which you dance?
Yeah, precisely. So the musical term becomes the dance very, very quickly.
Yeah,
the scene
exactly.
Interchangeable.
And so the next attestation in the OED, and this is also, it'll come up later as sort of one of these, is it really the second, or was it this one the first, is just to refer to the ring. So literally just a circular thing. So a ring of standing stones is one of the, or a ring of some sort of ceremonial stonework would have been one of the early definitions of carol. And that's in the OED for at 1330. Did I lose you? Can you still hear me?
No, I'm still here.
Okay.
It's just that I haven't interrupted for more than, say, 10 seconds. So you're probably assuming that I'm dead.
I heard a little click and I wasn't sure. My internet's been wonky. Anyway. So yeah, the ring of standing stones are just a ring dating back to
Sorry,
1330.
I'm laughing at myself now. There's nothing else to say about that. I'm just having a giggle at my incredibly annoying interruptions.
Obviously necessary interruptions. These are important. So
Continue.
we've got a ring, and we have by the early 1400s, on our little OED journey, it meant a small enclosure or study in a cloister. That was 1419. And in 1425, there's an attestation for it being a chain. And I'm assuming that there's an allusion to the circular links of a chain.
Sure.
And that's where that connection comes in. But I don't know. But there are a couple of entries.
Reasonable.
Yeah, there are a couple of entries in 1425 where the word carol is referring to a chain, and 1419 for it's a small study or within a cloister or a monastery or something. It's not until 1502 that the first reference shows up where it is a carol being, linked to Christmas.
You know what? That's actually earlier than I would have imagined.
Yeah, it is one of those things where it's like, that took a while, but not really. But it took that long for it to be associated with Christmas. And then sort of, it's not until obviously much, much later, like 1800s, it seems to have really solidified in being Christmas and carol are sort of really strongly linked. Because
I recently was doing a little bit of research for a lesson I was teaching at school about how so many of the British traditional Christmas things that we do didn't really exist until sort of 1840s, there or thereabouts, because they were largely Victorian traditions. So lots and lots of things just didn't exist in relation to Christmas until Victoria and Albert started to popularize them. And, you know, of course, what the Queen did, everyone wanted to do, and what wealthy people did then became popular. And so when you're saying 15, whenever carol begins to be associated with Christmas, I kind of have it in my head right now that Christmas was only really invented in
the mid 1800s,
1820s, 1840s. Yeah, exactly.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. There's a lot of stuff that came up in the 1800s that we kind of now just kind of go, well, it has always been thus.
Yeah, exactly. And it's really not that long ago.
No, not really. So on to the actual etymology of carol. There's a couple of different theories kicking around, which always makes it fun, because then it's like, you just pick one. It's like a choose your own adventure thing. So everyone agrees that it originally is from the French. So it's from Old French, just carole, C-A-R-O-L-E. A lot of different ways of writing down that hard k sound. So C, C-H, K, Q, all these other different options, right? But some form or other is from the Old French. And then the sort of Swiss, Romance, Provençal, Italian, these all have very, very similar words. And some of them, the A and the O are inverted. So some of them it's carole and some of them it's chorale. And then so this kind of seems to I think you're going in the right direction, because beyond that there seems to be a lot of disagreement, and the OED just kind of throws all these different theories out there and be like, here's what people think, go. And so one of them is, I think where you were going with this is choral, C-H-O-R-A-L, from Greek chorus, the group of singers and actors that did like sort of the background narration and musical moments in a Greek drama or play in general. And so that's one of the theories. Another theory is that it was a verb first. And so it was to carol was to perform that dance that we were talking about in the very earliest attestation. So that circular dance. Mm-hmm. There's one school of etymological thought that says that the verb to do that dance was the actual original point of the word, and that was traced back to choraula, or some other such proper Latin pronunciation, which was the word to describe, that was the title of the flute player who accompanied the chorus.
Well, this is just, it's like they've just decided to use this word like a big sticker and put it on everything.
Basically, yeah.
I love it.
And then there's a third option that talked about, that sort of takes as its starting point that the ring aspect was the earliest progenitor of this word. So that the ring that was attested earliest in 1330 That was kicking around first. That's where the dance got its name, because it was in the circular shape, because it was shaped like a carol. That's why the dance got its name. And that has been traced by a couple of linguistic scholars to be coming from corolla, which is sort of a Latin term meaning a little crown or a coronet or a garland.
Yeah,
and it comes from that. It's shaped like a crown. It's a ring. Then people started dancing, and then it became the song, and then it became the Christmas carol. That type of journey. The one is, it's funny that just a little chuckling moment. And because Smith's synonyms discriminated had nothing to say about carol, which I'm always sad about when that happens.
Curses.
Yeah. It's in all this sort of ambiguity and ambivalence, the OED has this one sentence that says, "A Celtic origin is out of the question." And so it's like,
I love that.
yeah, the compilers of the OED have had quite enough of your nonsense.
Yeah.
And
Done.
it's like,
The end.
Yeah.
No.
It's like,
Out of the question.
we are telling you that there are many options, but there are not infinite options. So let's not go crazy.
You can imagine this, can't you? The etymologist's Christmas party, and the whatever highly intoxicating drink has been passed around quite a few times, and so you get to the old chestnuts of the things that you always argue about, the stuff that Dave just won't let go, and folk etymology becomes more and more de rigueur, and the real scholars are kind of twitching a bit, but they're also kind of pissed and they don't care, and it's Christmas. But then it goes too far.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, look, we're having a good time. It's a pretty relaxed surrounding. We've had a few drinks. It's Christmas. But a Celtic origin is out of the question.
Yeah. For the love of crap, Ronan, you're taking it too far.
I'm a reasonable man, but...
Yeah. I will only allow Carol to be pushed so far.
I'm assuming there are few women at the etymologist's Christmas party. I don't know why that is.
No, in the word picture you were painting, nothing but men. Absolutely.
Well, yeah, perhaps a little.
So yeah,
that's a Celtic origin is out of the question.
Celtic origin out of the question. So we have two purely Latin Greek etymologies, and that's how we get from a circular dance in Stonehenge to Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer.
I have to admit that my slightly smug, I know a lot about Christmas, I know a lot about church music, and therefore I think I know where you're going with this, was completely incorrect. Because I was assuming that the word carol had somewhere in its roots the etymological forefather of the word carillon, as in a ringing of bells.
Okay, right.
So when you said that it had a nice ring to it, I assumed that bells were going to feature in the etymological story of the word carol. And they haven't so far, either because I'm completely, to use a beautifully Scots term, up the wrong dreel. I'll explain that one if you like, but sometimes I feel it's best not to, just to leave these crazy sounding words out there in the universe.
That's fantastic.
But yeah, so I thought that a carillon or carillon, all these different bell trilly sounding words.
Yeah. So
would have something to do with the carol. I'm frantically typing. You can tell I can't type and talk at the same time. So, carillon, we have a set of stationary bells hung in a tower and sounded by manual or pedal action or by machinery, a set of horizontal metal plates. Oh, so that is perhaps not a terribly generic bell word, as I was assuming. Not even slightly. So, carillon, carillon. The origin, just when I do a quick Google here, late 18th century, from French, from Old French, carignon, Quarregnon, which translates to peal of four bells.
Oh, nice. Which
so
I guess
there is in fact
there's the four buried in there with the QUA.
Yeah.
R. Oh, that's interesting.
So my slightly smug, I know about this word, complete absolute nonsense. Yeah, but Christmassy. So we'll count that.
Well, exactly. Still Christmassy. And
I
still
also-
pun-based, so that's good.
I don't know if this is a distinction that I've kind of made up in my head, or if it's one that other language users actually have. But I would always tend to differentiate between Christmas carols and Christmas songs. So in my head, Christmas carols always have a religious origin slant basis. So by that rationale, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer isn't a Christmas carol; it's a Christmas song. But I don't know. I don't know if that is just an idiosyncratic church music kind of thing to do, or if that's, as I say, used by anybody else. So your Jingle Bell Rock and even those songs that are so embedded in our Christmas consciousness that it's impossible to imagine Christmas without them, that aren't very old, but it feels like they're very, very old because you hear them so many times over such a short space of time.
Yeah.
So many of those have absolutely nothing to do with the religious basis of Christmas. But then, I mean, we could get all terribly hand-wringy and it's all about Jesus and people have ruined Christmas about it if we wanted to. I personally do not.
No. In the same way that you could draw the line between which are technically Advent carols and which ones are Christmas carols. But then you don't get invited to parties anymore.
Yeah, I suppose people do that, but yeah, maybe the etymologist Christmas party would welcome you in for a wee glühwein or something, but I don't know.
Best not risk it.
Yeah, a Celtic origin is out of the question.
Out of the question. Get out of here.
I feel like I'm going to use this phrase and no one in the universe is going to know what I'm talking about.
And that's going to be, it's just going to be shorthand. In my head,
it's shorthand for don't be bloody ridiculous.
Yeah, just slamming the door on a clearly ridiculous train of thought. Hey, maybe we should do this for our classroom. Next time you're lesson planning with your teacher colleagues, you're like, we should do this.
A Celtic origin is completely out of the question.
Celtic origin is out of the question.
I like it a lot.
Yeah, it's good. It's got promise.
Cool.
Shall we, Hey Roger, either of these?
Oh, let's, Hey Roger. Cue sound effects of flickering pages. They're not in any way sound effects. I just have the book quite close to the microphone. Dilemma. I've said it before, but there is something about alphabetical order that makes me want to A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H every single time. Okay, so dilemma, we have 5 synonyms given in the alphabetical index.
Okay. We
have circumstance. Piss poor, Roger. That's not good.
Yeah, it's not good.
I've judged that one. We have dubiety, D-U-B-I-E-T-E, which again has the idea of do, die, the sort of doubleness going on. We have argumentation, choice, or predicament. So you're right, the sense of an impossible choice does seem to have been watered down a little bit. I mean, a predicament
is closest.
Yeah. But otherwise, it's more, could do this, could do that.
Yeah.
There are options here, and we have to decide on an option rather than the sense of spiked one way or the other. Okay, what about Carol? I wonder, when did Carol start to be used as a name?
That I didn't look into. That would be interesting to see how that throws itself into this mix.
Oh, wow. One of the synonyms given for Carol is a word that I heard this week. And in fact, it was almost certainly a Dan Carlin word. So we have Carol. The first synonym given is ululate.
Oh.
Ululate. And the word ululation, I was in my car, I was listening to Hardcore History, this word came up. So of course I went, woo! Because that's the sound that word makes. And if my microphone hasn't just exploded, then I don't quite know how that's happened. Anyway,
for everyone.
Here's my ululation.
That's fantastic.
Next we have vocal music.
Okay.
Sing, Yeah, that sentence as in to carol, to sing a carol.
Yep.
Voice. You could go far wrong
That's
with
very
that.
general, yeah.
And then we have be cheerful,
Oh.
rejoice, and offer worship. So no circular senses whatsoever.
No. That's interesting.
I do find it very, very pleasing indeed that a word where you can chase which came first, the ring, the song, the dance, refers to a circle, one which has no obvious end,
Yeah,
no obvious
exactly.
beginning.
That is pleasing.
Yeah, that's quite nice. Yeah, so Roger
cool.
doesn't pick up any of the sense of the original, well, one of the many original meanings given for the word at all. Nice.
Neat. Awesome.
That's it for another episode of Lexitecture. If you like what you've heard, please spread the words. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook by searching Lexitecture, Lexitecture, and find us on our website at lexitecture.com. We also love hearing from you, so if you've got a word you'd like us to look into, a tasty bit of trivia to share, or anything else you'd like to tell us, drop us a line at words@lexitecture.com. Talk to you next time. Bye.